The day Adaeze discovered that the man she had called Daddy for 25 years was actually her biological mother, she did not scream. She did not cry. She simply sat on the floor and stared at the wall for 3 hours straight. Because some truths are so big that your body does not know how to react to them. But before we begin this story, please subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share it with everyone you know. Also, turn on the notification bell so you never miss any of our powerful and lesson-packed stories. Now, let's begin. Once upon a time, there lived a young woman named Adaeze Okonkwo. Adaeze was 25 years old, sharp-minded, gentle-hearted, and deeply ambitious. She had just secured her first real job at a reputable firm in Abuja after years of struggling, and she was finally beginning to feel like life was smiling at her. To everyone who knew her, Adaeze was a woman who had beaten the odds. Raised by a single father in a modest apartment in Enugu, she had no siblings, no extended family she was close to, and no mother. Her mother, she was told, had abandoned them both when Adaeze was barely 2 years old. That was the story. That had always been the story. Her father's name was Emeka. Just Emeka. A tall, lean, quietly spoken man who worked as a tailor and who smelled always of starch and thread. Emeka was not the kind of father who threw his daughter in the air or wrestled with her on the living room carpet. He was tender in a different way. He was the father who stayed up until midnight, sewing her school uniforms when money was tight. He was the father who sat beside her bed when she had fever and pressed a cold cloth against her forehead without being asked. He was the father who cried silently at her university graduation, thinking she had not noticed. But she had noticed. She always noticed everything about him. And yet, certain things about Emeka never made sense to Adaeze. Small things. Strange things. He never wore short sleeves. Not once. Not even in the brutal Harmattan heat when neighbours walked around in singlets and sandals. He always wore long sleeves buttoned at the wrist. He bathed only when Adaeze was out of the house or deeply asleep. As a child, she thought nothing of it. As an adult, it began to feel deliberate. His voice, though low, sometimes slipped into something softer, something almost musical, and then he would clear his throat quickly, as if catching himself. There were no photographs of him before her birth, none at all. She had once asked, and he had said simply that he was not a man who liked cameras. She had accepted this because children accept what they are given. He never visited the hospital, not for checkups, not for anything. The one time she had tried to book him an appointment, he had become so agitated that she had dropped the subject entirely. These were the breadcrumbs she had collected across 25 years without ever knowing she was collecting them. It happened on a Saturday morning in November. Adaeze had returned to Enugu unexpectedly to surprise her father for his birthday. She had bought a small cake, his favourite, coconut-flavoured, and had planned to set it on the table before he woke up. But when she arrived, the apartment was empty. A neighbour told her Emeka had gone to the market and would return within the hour. Adaeze let herself in with her spare key and began tidying the apartment while she waited. It was while she was dusting the top of the old wooden shelf that a brown envelope fell from behind a stack of books. It hit the floor and split open. Inside were documents, folded carefully, old, brittle at the edges. She almost put them back without looking. Almost. But one piece of paper caught her eye. A hospital record. And on it, clearly typed, were 2 words that made the room tilt beneath her feet. Patient. Female. The name beside it was not Emeka Okonkwo. It was Ngozi Okonkwo. When Emeka returned home 30 minutes later, Adaeze was sitting at the kitchen table. The documents were spread before her, The hospital records sat on top. He stopped in the doorway. The plastic bag in his hand dropped slowly to the floor. Oranges rolled across the tiles. Neither of them spoke for what felt like a very long time. Then Adaeze looked up. "Daddy," she said quietly. "Who is Ngozi?" The man she had known all her life closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were full of tears. He walked slowly to the chair across from her and sat down. His hands, those familiar hands that had sewn her dresses and braided her hair and held hers across busy roads, were trembling. "Ngozi," he said at last, "is me." Adaeze shook her head slowly. "What do you mean?" Emeka swallowed hard, and then he said the sentence that split her world in two. "Adaeze, I am your mother." What followed was a story that Adaeze had never been prepared to hear. Many years before she was born, Ngozi Okonkwo had been a young woman living in a small riverside community in Delta State. She was brilliant, quietly beautiful, and deeply determined to build a life beyond the limitations placed on women in her village. But the world she lived in was not kind to ambitious women. Her family had promised her in marriage to an older man she had never chosen. When she refused, she was disowned. When she fled to the city, she was completely alone. In Lagos, she met a man named Chukwudi. He was warm and funny, and he looked at her like she was worth something. They built a small life together. They were happy. Then Ngozi became pregnant, and for a brief, beautiful season, everything felt right. But Chukwudi had secrets of his own. He owed dangerous men dangerous money. One evening, he did not come home. 3 days later, Ngozi was informed that his body had been found near the waterside. Just like that, she was alone again, pregnant, grieving, and now being hunted by the same men who had killed her husband because they believed she knew where Chukwudi had hidden their money. She knew nothing, but they did not believe her. Twice they broke into her apartment. Once they grabbed her on the street in broad daylight and warned her that next time would be different. She was 8 months pregnant when she ran. She boarded a night bus to Enugu with nothing but a bag and the child growing inside her. 2 weeks later, Adaeze was born in a public hospital under a different name. And then Ngozi looked at her daughter, this small, fierce, breathing miracle, and made a decision that would define the next 25 years of her life. She could not protect this child as a woman. She had tried. The world had shown her exactly what it did to women who were alone. But a man, a quiet, unremarkable, hard-working man, that was someone the world would leave alone. So Ngozi cut her hair. She bound herself tightly. She lowered her voice and squared her shoulders and walked out of that hospital as Emeka. And nobody ever looked twice. Adaeze listened to all of it without moving. When it was over, she stood up from the table, picked up her handbag, and walked out of the apartment without a word. She drove to her hotel room, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at nothing. For 2 weeks, she did not call. She did not visit. She responded to his messages with single words that said everything and nothing at the same time. Fine, busy, later. She was not angry. She told herself that repeatedly. She was not angry. She was simply unable to locate herself inside the story she had always believed was her life. If the foundation was different, what was she standing on? Emeka, for his part, did not push. He sent small messages in the evenings. "Ate something today? Hope you are warm. The coconut cake is still here if you want it." She read every one. The call came on a Thursday evening. It was a doctor's voice, calm and professional, and the words he used were words that Adaeze would later be unable to remember clearly because her brain refused to file them properly. Stroke, left side, stable but serious. Come as soon as you can. She was in her car before the call ended. When she arrived at the hospital, Emeka was lying in a white bed, looking smaller than she had ever seen him look. The long sleeves were gone. There was a drip in his arm, and for the first time in her entire life, Adaeze saw the truth that clothing had always hidden. She sat beside the bed and took his hand, and she did not let go. Over the following weeks, Emeka recovered slowly, but the doctors were honest. The damage was significant. There would be more episodes. The body had carried too much for too long. One evening, as rain fell softly outside the hospital window, Emeka turned to look at her. "Are you still angry with me?" he asked. His voice was slower now, slightly slurred on one side, but still his voice. Still the voice that had read her bedtime stories and argued with her over homework and whispered, "Well done," at her graduation. "I was never angry," Adaeze said. "I was just lost." Emeka nodded slowly. "I wanted to tell you so many times." "Why didn't you?" He was quiet for a long moment. "Because every time I looked at you, I saw how safe you were. And I was afraid that the truth would make you feel unsafe. I was afraid you would look at me differently." Adaeze felt something crack open inside her chest. "And how did you want me to look at you?" He turned to face her fully then, eyes wet, voice barely a whisper. "Like I was enough." Adaeze leaned forward and pressed her forehead gently against his. "You were never just enough," she said. "You were everything." Emeka passed away 6 weeks later on a quiet Sunday morning, just as the church bells in the neighborhood began to ring. Adaeze was beside him. She had not left his side in 3 days. He went peacefully. That was what the nurses said afterward, and for once Adaeze believed the thing that people said at the end of hard lives because she had been there, and she had felt it. The room had been completely still. His breathing had simply grown softer and softer until it became part of the silence. She sat with him for a long time after. Then she folded her hands in her lap and whispered, "Rest now, Mama. You carried me long enough." At the funeral, people gathered in their numbers, neighbours, clients whose clothes Emeka had sewn for decades, colleagues, community members who had known the quiet tailor for years. When it was Adaeze's turn to speak, she stood at the front and looked out at all of them for a long moment. Then she said, "The man you knew as Emeka was my father. He taught me to be strong and to work hard and to never wait for someone to rescue me because I was capable of rescuing myself." She paused. "But I want to tell you something today that he never told you. Something I am no longer willing to keep quiet about." The crowd stilled. Emeka was not a man. Emeka was my mother. A woman named Ngozi who loved her daughter so completely that she was willing to disappear so that her daughter could be safe. She gave up her name. She gave up her body. She gave up the right to be known for who she truly was. For 25 years. Every single day. For me. Not a sound in the crowd. So today I am not burying my father. Today I am saying goodbye to my mother. And I need her to know, wherever she is now, that I see her. I have always seen her. And I would not change a single thing. She placed a single white flower on the coffin. "Go and be Ngozi again, Mama. You have more than earned it." Closing moral. Sometimes love does not arrive in the shape we expect. Sometimes it arrives wrapped in sacrifice so profound that it asks a person to erase everything about themselves so that someone else can exist fully. Ngozi did not lie because she was dishonest. She survived because she was a mother. And in the end, that was the only truth that mattered. Do you think Ngozi made the right decision by hiding her true identity for 25 years to protect her daughter? Let us know what you think in the comments section below. And please do not forget to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share it with everyone you know. Thank you for watching.